I am reading Vague Vacation. This is a travel book by Joan Marshall Grant. It was published in 1947. She was the writer of her own far memories, but she's also written a couple of travel books. This one is a journey, her journeys through France with her then husband Charles. This is chapter 7, entitled MARC. Today is Friday the 13th of December. The barman at the Solier Hotel was also a friend of Patver. He had been at the Ritz in Paris until sent to a concentration camp, where he had remained for over 3 years. It was not agreeable, he said. The Germans are not pleasant, but it is finished. It is not necessary to remember it. We were to learn that the French have become masters of that understatement, which used to be considered a prerogative of the British. Exuberant phrases, ingeniously florid, as Baroque or Rococo decoration, are reserved for such horrors as the injudicious flavouring of a sauce, or the tragedy of a wine-grown senile. When they speak of terrible reality, it is in small words which etch deep. When we had finished lunch, we returned to the bar for a brandy, after which the barman insisted on giving us each a mark. It was a speciality of the district, and he assured us the genuine pre-war, now very rare. I rolled it round the ballon and sniffed. Unless my nose deceived me, it must have been a close relation of Irish potheen, or poteen. The taste confirmed my opinion, and I sent a warning glance to Charles, yet not to hurt the barman's feelings. We pretended to enjoy it, and Charles accepted a second and larger portion. It produced no feeling of intoxication, though I think in quantity it would be lethal as a blow with a blunt instrument. But within half an hour we were wrapped in melancholy. Beyond Auton, our depression deepened at the sight of the cauldron of Les Crosseaux, with its cemeterial armament factories and grey villages set about with dead pyramids of slag. Charles' stomach began to send messages to him, shamelessly plagiarizing Nathaniel Gubbins. "What have you done to me?" wailed Tom. It must have been the fungus in the hors d'oeuvre, Charles replied coldly. Overhearing their conversation, I said unsympathetically, there was nothing wrong with the sepi, except too much fennel in the sauce. Tom, ask him about the mark. I warned him it was poteen, but he wouldn't listen. "You may have burned a hole in me," growled Tom. "Stop it, don't you know I've got a headache? Can't you forget about yourself and be quiet?" I pulled up outside a sad little cafe. "Some witchy water won't do either of us any harm," I said. We sat on an iron bench by the roadside, watching ox carts loaded with firewood creak slowly past us. The woman who served us was so shabby that we wished we could have ordered something more expensive. We asked for fruit, and she brought pears which were hard and tasteless as turnips. Soon afterwards the road began to climb, and suddenly new country opened to the west. Massive hills folded with cloud shadows led to a higher, farther mountains. We parked the car and sat on a stone wall looking down on the first vine terraces we had seen since before the war. We crossed the road and followed a steep track among brambles. I picked a handful of the remarkably large blackberries and offered them to Charles. "Not funny," he said, and stalked ahead of me. I sat in the sun and waited. He looked happier when he returned. "You've been sick?" "Mountain sick, or possibly car sick," you drove too fast. Rounding the curved crest of a hill larger than most, we saw a rocky massif so striking that we stopped to look at it and consulted the map to find its name, La Roche-Vineuse. For different reasons we determined to return here later. I, to investigate a chateau seen in the distance near a village called La Croix-Blanche, Charles for the compelling signs which indicated cellars of Mâconnais. Abruptly we entered Mâcon, and by tortuous streets found ourselves on the broad road by the river. Here the sun turned everything to gold in the last few minutes of direct light. The river was damascened. The bridges, even the gaunt piers of those destroyed, were brave in their gilding. The best thing to do, I offered, is to get a drink at the excellent hotel Oliver has told us about. We don't know which road to take since the bridges are down. Besides, it is a long time since lunch. Charles was not reluctant to agree. Years of petrol restrictions had atrophied our facility for long runs. Though the car had behaved well, we were stiff and tired. A drink, we thought, in a gay hotel would do us good. We would sit in a window overlooking the river and placidly watch the sunset before beginning the last lap to THAW. Of a passer-by we inquired for the famous hotel. He indicated it in just such a position as we had imagined, full on the river. We parked the car in front of it and went in. To a desolation of damp walls, through protesting doors of dim glass along musty corridors, we peered into a huge dining room where the ABC pattern of wooden chairs ranged themselves in whispering ranks and disapproved of such a rare event as human footfall. Even the office was deserted, but we found a bell, and after some minutes a woman appeared in answer to it and switched on a light. We asked without expectation for cognac, Perrier, and the information about THAW. With the unfailing courtesy we were to find wherever we went in France, all three were instantly forthcoming, but in the Stygian gloom those failed to cheer us. I read chapter 8 as well, Autumn Thaw. Our journey so far had been not on a grande route, at least on a highway. Now we found ourselves bumping along narrow lanes in the encroaching darkness. Through both of us are well aware of the extreme variability of space and time, it was difficult to believe that the distance from Mâcon to THAW is less than 20 kilometers. We wound through lush meadows populated by quantities of sleek cows, but even the prospect of much butter failed to raise our hearts. After the Mâcon Hotel, we were disinclined to believe in any friend's recommendation. Farms apparently straddling the road came up at us out of the half-dark. Dogs barked. Ox carts full of grapes held the crown of the road, and we were loath to use the horn. We were stared at politely, but enough to make us feel for the first time strangers to the country through which we passed. It became darker, and the surface worsened. Speed was reduced to little more than 20 miles. We had lost the river and indeed all sense of direction. It was colder. The headlights wobbled until I thought one of them would fall off. The village of THAW is long and straggling. Closed shutters like eyelids sealed with clay suggested the necropolis of an abandoned culture. In actual fact, it is difficult to lose the way to the Champagne, but this was one of the moments when Pied Noir, that malign shadow of Patver, who only arrives to taunt us when we are disgruntled with each other or taking a defeatist view, managed to lead us first to a bombed bridge and then through several alleys, all of which seemed to be one-way streets going to the wrong direction. At last we saw the hotel sign and drove into a courtyard crowded with plane trees which pressed close to the windows. It can only have been Piedmont who made us see it as dark and dismal. Sadly, we went upstairs to a room where a solitary light bulb exposed mustard-coloured wallpaper. Charles, in bitter resignation, went to collect the luggage. I turned the hot tub of the basin. Nothing flowed. I turned the cold tub and there ran but a trickle of rusty water. I turned the taps of the bidet. Nothing. I sat miserably on the bed and stared at a large gilt Alsatian dog which snarled at me from the chest of drawers. Fortunately, when Charles came up with the first instalment of the 5 suitcases, the books and maps, the coats, the flask, and the basket of wilting grapes I had insisted on buying yesterday, he was too preoccupied to take due note of the room. But it was obvious that he was in no mood for apologies, and after all, it was I who had made all the arrangements. I pulled myself together with such a jerk that had I worn corsets, they would have twanged like harp strings. Perhaps there was another room available. At least I could try to do something constructive. I rang the bell and the smiling maid returned. She said there was certainly another room, the best of all, with its own terrace. But alas, she said, it has twin beds. If Monsieur had not said that he preferred the one bed, we would have given you the balcony room in the first place. I raised quite a smile. When Charles returned with the next load, we were already, the maid and I, clearing the free room and cluttering up the new one, which was a great improvement. Already I had opened the shutters and the windows which gave on to the balcony. Cool air streamed in. There was no dog. The wallpaper was subdued, and at least cold water ran freely from the taps. When the maid had gone, I demanded why he had insisted on a double bed. It was at least something which to begin my defence. Charles, however, did not attack. He said rather curtly that someone had asked him whether he wanted one bed or 2, and he had replied that it really didn't matter, and then, feeling he had perhaps been ungallant, added that he himself preferred a double bed, leaving it to be inferred that I preferred 2. Conversation languished. We sponged our faces in the cold water. "What do you think of it?" he said ominously. "I hope you are not expecting a bath. Then there has been a drought, and the only water comes from a well. Some unfortunate person would have to lug buckets even for a tepid paddle." "Bath?" I said brightly. "Don't be so fussy about washing. The weather will probably be warm enough to swim in the river, and if not, it won't do us any harm to be a bit grubby." Startled into silence, he joined me in search of a drink. The time was now 7:30, so dinner, we thought, would be almost immediately available. In this we were to be disappointed, and there was nowhere to sit, save on the veranda, which was dreary in the half-light, or the empty estaminet, reminiscent of a railway waiting room, which was separated from the kitchen quarters only by a partition, which was a foot short of the ceiling. In sheer desperation, Charles put his head around the door and asked for something to drink. A motherly woman got up from the table and came across to us. What, she inquired, would we like? And with that sudden vacuum that so often afflicts people trying to cope with a foreign tongue, neither of us could answer. I wanted a huge dry martini. Charles wanted a whiskey of even nobler dimensions. But inspiration came to us in time and were most generously rewarded. "Have you by any chance," said Charles diffidently, "any champagne left?" "Oh, yes, monsieur," came the astonishing reply. "What brand would you like?" "Anything," said Charles. "The best is 450 francs," she said, as though it were an exceptionally high price instead of being less than half what we had paid up to this time. "Wonderful," said Charles frankly. In 5 minutes the wine was on the table, complete with ice bucket. We raised our glasses. "No place with champagne served like this," we said, "is going to let us down." And in that we were proved abundantly right. The dinner was a quiet prelude to the fully orchestrated taste poems later produced by Monsieur Blanc, the patron and a master chef. Like all artists, he created only when in the right mood, and on other occasions left the preparation of meals to his skilled but less inspired aide-de-camp. He was also a chasseur of fame, who with his spaniel and his pointer frequently spent the day in the woods, returning to dine in the restaurant with his companions, who regaled each other with stories of the hunt. We did not meet him until the following morning, and I think Madame Blanc was a little put out that he was not present to welcome us. To her it may have appeared a dull meal, but the pâté maison, the entrecôte, the haricots verts dripping with herbs and butter, floating gently down our gullets on waves of good Beaujolais, had on us an effect like water on the Japanese flowers which enchanted me as a child. We, who had been no more than nondescript shreds, greatly expanded into our natural selves, and Piedmont slank from the door. The only other occupant of the restaurant now available to Patver went to the piano and began to play Tentative Swing. With renewed confidence, we introduced ourselves and asked whether we might be permitted to listen. He made the necessary excuses which modesty, in this case quite needlessly, demanded, then sang to us in the manner of Jean Sablon. He was young and good-looking. It was a little surprising to learn that he was the local dentist, until he explained that he had always wanted to be a musician, and once a week journeyed to Lyon, where, for his one real evening in the drab waste of dentures and decay, he found relaxation in playing the drums in a nightclub. A face beamed round the restaurant door. "Madame's bath is ready." Surely this was too much, but no. The maids, soon to become valued friends, had carried saucepan after saucepan of boiling water up the stairs to the bathroom. I soaked in beatific peace, and if there was a few shreds of carrot in the water, they were the final distinction. Goldfish in an ornamental pool. A full-sized cabbage would have attained the distinction of a lotus. Better kindliness and a bidet, where no water flows, than 7 taps and a shower with frozen faces. Well, that was chapter 8, and chapter 9 is to come, au chapon fin.